Aloha, I'm Paul Norman, and I'm the Executive Director of Neighborhood Place of Puna. And today, I wanted to do something a little bit different because, the work that we do at Neighborhood Place of Puna and the work that many of our colleagues do in the human services field is very hard. I mean, for us, we are trying to address the immediate needs of families, making sure that their house or shelter, that they have enough food, that they have the basic necessities, that they have the skills that they need, or the resources they need, or the supports they need to be good parents. And at the same time, we're also doing the work to try and advocate for big changes in our society to make our community better, to make our community stronger, to create a community in which fewer and fewer families and children have to experience homelessness, have to experience hunger, have to experience lack of opportunity. And this can be really hard because the challenges are big, right? I mean, making those kinds of challenges are hard. And then combined with just the day in day out challenges of helping families and having your heart pulled by the stories, and they're good stories, but they're also suffering stories of hardship and suffering. And so today, I would just share with you one of the things that helps me stay inspired, stays energized to do the work over the long haul, and that is I enjoy reading the stories about and reading about inspiring figures in history. I because I have a religious background, I tend to lean towards religious figures, but not all. And today it's wonderful because we have the internet, we have a very interconnected world, and so in the past where you might read, the accounts of the saints or the desert fathers or other religious figures, now we can read about and learn from compassionate leaders from around the world, from different cultures that have faced different problems and different struggles. And for me, more importantly, that have lived in the recent, either are living now or have lived in the recent past. And we can understand, or we can see, or we can remember, the real challenges that they face. We can see their humanness. That's a negative way to say it, but we can, see their humanness, the good and the personal faults that they may have. Right. And that makes it possible, at least in my mind, it makes it possible when they're humans to say, hey, if they can do it, maybe I can do something close, right? I can do my little bit. And so since it's the beginning of July, I thought today we would talk a little bit, I would share a little bit about the Dalai Lama, or His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And for those of you who don't know, the Dalai Lama is the spiritual leader of the Tibetan people. Until recently, he was the spiritual and political leader of the Tibetan people, but he's recently handed off the political power to the Tibetan government in exile. And just to give you a brief thumbnail sketch of his history, the Dalai Lama was born in Tibet, in a free Tibet, in 1935. And then in the early 1950s, under Mao Zedong and the People's Liberation Army, China invaded Tibet. In fact, in 1951, they arrived in Lhasa, which is basically the capital of Tibet. And so at this time, the Dalai Lama was 16. I mean, you can imagine being 16 years old and having to deal with this major political upheaval. And during the 50s, things just got really bad. And then finally, in 1959, there was an uprising of the Tibetan people, and the Dalai Lama fled Tibet to India and became a refugee in India. And that was, I think he was like he was 23 at that time. So still very young, just hard to imagine. And, the sad story is that it's widely believed that around 1.2 million Tibetans out of 6 million, or one of every 6 Tibetans, lost their life as a result of the Chinese invasion, occupation, and the many just horrible atrocities that were committed um, at the time and continue to be committed even into this day. The Chinese have very systematically suppressed the Tibetan people and tried to destroy their culture, eliminate their language. The Tibetan people are very religious. They destroyed something like 6,000 temples and monasteries. They've mass incarcerated Tibetans in Tibet. They've separated children from their parents for re-education in Chinese re-education schools. They continue to torture in public and in secret Tibetans and do public executions. It's a very brutal situation in Tibet right now. It's really just hard to imagine. And to have that weight on the shoulders of the Dalai Lama is, I couldn't imagine what I would be in that situation. And, and he arrives in India, very limited resources, and essentially has to save the Tibetan people and the Tibetan culture and create a vibrant Tibetan culture in exile. Again, he's 23, 24 years old when he starts this. And he has help. He's not alone, but he is very successful at that. Now, people around the world recognize the Dalai Lama as a religious leader. Many people know about the plight of the Tibetan people and the sufferings that they undergo. They have schools in where the culture is being taught to the new generation of Tibetans, taught in the Tibetan language. They are managed to save their religious practices, their cultural practices. So in that sense, tremendously successful. But also at the same time, we need to recognize that he has failed at getting autonomy for the Tibetan people in China. That the Chinese repression of the Tibetan people has continued and in some respects gotten worse. And in fact, China over the years has become an economic power and has curried favor with the United States and other countries, whereas the Dalai Lama and all the Tibetans living in India are still refugees. They're still stateless and still dependent upon the hospitality and kindness of the Indian government. And even, to this day, as Tibetans flee Tibet under Chinese control, the Dalai Lama sees these individuals, hears their stories, hears their suffering. And yet, as a person, the Dalai Lama, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, is a very joyful person. And I find that quite inspiring that in the midst of great tragedy, great suffering, great loss, having to bear witness to and hear the pain and suffering of so many individuals. And yet he is still a joyous person. He has not been defeated by the situation. He has not become, his life has not become ruled by disdain and hatred, which is a temptation, right? I mean, I think many of us in that same situation might be filled with hate and rage, but he is not. And when he teaches, and again, you know, what he's teaching is this is not unique to him. It's not new, whatever, but that, you know, he teaches that, that our happiness, our personal happiness is tied up in or bound in, with the happiness of others, right? So that we are nurtured by the kindness and the interactions of relationships with others. And that, yes, a certain level of wealth is important. So you can have your basic needs met. You don't have to have a lot of anxiety around your future welfare because you don't have enough money, you don't have enough to eat, you don't have access to medical care, you don't have stable housing. I mean, yes, all those need to be taken care of. But after that, the really important thing is our relationships with others. And since relationship is kind of central in his philosophy, or at least the philosophy he shares with the world, then the two wings of that, the two important elements of that are love and compassion. Right? This is not, again, not new. And he, when he talks about it, he prioritizes love and compassion over institutional religion. And, you know, if you grew up in the United States and you're a Christian, not news to you, right? This is, Jesus was very much saying the same thing and ran afoul of religious authorities because of that. You know, for him, for the Dalai Lama, when he's teaching, love and compassion are the central message. Yes, we can fight the fight. We should stand up for the values that we find important. We should stand up for the compassionate care of others, but we don't need to come away from that hateful. And so when I read about the life of the Dalai Lama, when I listen to little snippets of his teachings or come across something he's written, I'm really just humbled by his life and inspired to do what little I can, because, you know, what we're doing here, unlike what he is faced with the intractableness of the Chinese Communist Party. What we are trying to do here in East Hawaii is simply create a community in which every family is housed and fed and loved. Right? Simple. I mean, relatively simple. It's going to take work, but it's relatively simple. It's relatively attainable, right? You know, we're trying to create a community in which every child can grow up in a safe, stable, and nurturing home. That's what we all want. We may have different views of how to get there, but we all agree that every child should grow up in a safe, stable, and nurturing home. And really the only thing that is standing in the way of us realizing that today or tomorrow or this year is the effort it's going to take for us to work together. So I hope that you found a little value in this. I hope that maybe learning a little bit about His Holiness the Dalai Lama and his life, his experience, his teachings will help inspire you to keep doing the work that you're doing, to keep doing the work of creating a better community, a more compassionate community, because that's what we're really talking about, creating a more compassionate community in which cares for the weak and the vulnerable, and in particular, our families and our children. So if you like this video, be sure to click the like button and subscribe to our channel. And you can also check us out at neighborhoodplaceofpuna.org. Aloha and have a wonderful week.